to SSO Coaching 76. I am your host, Kathleen DePrizio, and today we have a special guest, Luann Horobin. She is a success coach. She is a native of, is it Alberta, Canada?
Yes, it is
Very
Alberta,
cool.
Canada.
Yes, she is a native of Alberta, Canada. She is one of 1,700 ICF master coaches. She specializes in executive and leadership coaching, career acceleration, and transformational consultation. She comes from a simple background, which is usually the best in that respect for trying to overcome adversity. Luann's deep dive into the neuroscience of transformation can definitely help to anyone that is looking to actually change their mindset and to take their career to a next level. So I am happy to introduce everyone to Luann. Thank you, Luann, for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. I'm excited to be here. I love your topic. Breaking the mold, I think it's perfect. It's exactly what I like to do. And I think we run into it so often in our life where we have to break our own mold that I'm really excited to be here and to join you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. So let me ask, I don't really do, the normal podcast. I'm not going to ask you 80 bazillion questions or anything like that. This is not an interview. This is more of us just having a conversation. I think it flows better that way. So tell us a little bit about what it is you do in your practice and how you got there.
Okay, so I'll start with how I got there in that as you mentioned, I have a kind of a simple background. I was raised on the farm and really very achievement oriented, kind of progressive oriented, and keen on learning. So before I even went to school, could really do a lot of things. I could create lunch, for everyone. Like we had hired hands on the farm, so there was a lot of things I was just really comfortable and confident in doing, and that was kind of the approach that I took all through school. That type of thing. It was just this kind of really sort of aggressive learning curve. And when I started my career, which I really loved, I was in healthcare, middle management, and I just loved my role. I had some people management, I had some organizational development, and I was like,
Oh,
this was just an ideal fit for me. And I could see the growth and kind of going along in career happy land. And there was a massive restructure where I unexpectedly received a package just under those circumstances. And it really caught me by surprise. I was 100% unprepared for that. And it's kind of like at that point in time, I was also going through several personal changes. So it was like this puzzle that I had created was really coming apart in many different ways. And so I thought, okay, well, I can deal with this. But changing and making those personal changes, making those professional changes I just felt like I was literally flogging the swamp. Like I just felt like it was so much work and effort and just minimal results. I thought, I think I'm doing something wrong. Like I think, I'm working, I'm doing what I typically would know what I should do, but very little change. So it really forced me to really go inside and think of like what else can I do? Like what is really calling me here? And that led me to coaching, where I quickly saw a lot of the things about my approach that weren't working. And once I started working with that, I was so intrigued with the neuroscience, like the brain science of it all and the thought processes and what a difference it made, because it was literally like I flipped a switch and it literally, so you could sort of say, put gas in my tank again. It's everything started to kind of unfold so much differently and so much smoother that I thought, as I was in that environment, I was in an environment where there was a lot of change and I could see a lot of that around me. But I could also see a lot of times where people were saying, well, I'm just going to stick with this. I'm just going to do this. I can't really make the changes. I can't really do what I want. And it was a really challenging time because I personally, I think because I was able to do things at an early age, I really had a belief that we really can do what we want. And so that's leads me to that's what I work with is I help people recognize that those things that they think are true about themselves, some of them are working for us, but some of them aren't really working that great. And I help people understand like what's the difference? And I guess you could say kind of uncover the blind spots because we think something's true. Like it's a definite strategy. That's why we're following it. We just don't see how it's not working for us because we really think we see it from the perspective that it is there for a particular reason. However, that's not maybe always the best reason. So we just kind of get to the bottom of how that could be different so that a person can be more aligned with how they're growing and evolving.
I think sometimes we're a little bit too close to a situation to actually see how detrimental it could be to us. And or it's either that or we've just been staying the course for so long, we don't know how to deviate.
But both of those are really, really accurate because it's something like, it's like our hair. It's there every day. This is the way we learned how to, this is the way we learned how to unfold, how to operate. This is the truth of our understanding of how the world works. And it's not for lack of trying. Like there's nothing, what I'm trying to say is we're on this path, not because something's wrong. We're just growing. We've grown out of the mindset or the frameworks and the structures that have typically worked for us before. And it's not always an easy thing to just evolve and grow and change because some of those aspects are so familiar, we don't actually really recognize them as anything else other than it's like air. That's just the way it is, right? So it's a really valid point. It's an outside pair of eyes and an outside kind of, I would say, set of expertise that recognizes some of those things that are so familiar to us.
Well, we move along our paths in life and we keep going and doing what we need to do, but then we turn around and get like a coach like you or I, and that person can potentially show you how, like I've done lean projects in my corporate life, and they show you on one of the exercises in a lean project, they show you how to look at something through a different lens. It's different
Yes.
perspective. So you have to look at it from, that's why you do groups. And you can bring in this person, this person, this person, get completely different perspectives on the
Yeah.
same exact problem. And unless you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone and get comfortable being uncomfortable to potentially get coaching, you're not going to see that other perspective because you're literally looking at everything like this and your
Mhm.
blinders are on. So sometimes it takes coaching in order to step outside your box.
That's so true. And I love your approach on perspective because I find that that's a significant step. And I work with that a fair bit in helping people understand sort of where they are and the difference in where they are. It's kind of like it bridges the gap from where they are to where they want to go. And it's also human nature, I think, when we're wanting to change something, I observe this, but I know I experience this myself. When I really want to change something, I typically go and look for some type of knowledge, like I want to go learn about this. And what I'm doing at that point is helpful because I'm gaining knowledge. But until we change literally the operating programs that determine how we interpret that knowledge, we're still going to interpret it in similar manners that we have before. And so this is the kind of the difference is sometimes it's like adding knowledge is one form of learning. And I call that's horizontal development. But what I'm looking at is vertical development. And vertical development is where we are going to change the perspective. We're actually going to change the operating structure of how you interpret that so that we can see the differences in that new knowledge.
I love that. I mean, in order to sometimes, and it doesn't take a complete and total reset, but sometimes it does take a step sideways to look at something from a different angle in
Mm.
order to reset that mindset. Like there are times especially in the transportation world, which is my business, where we'll go into a certain situation and we are looking at a problem, but you're not seeing the full problem, and we can't see where we need to actually step in to fix it, but we're all looking at it because we're all looking at it from the same side. So you have, as an operations person, which is in my blood, you have to step back and you have to look at it from a different angle. No matter what, you have to get other perspectives. You have to bring in outside people in order to potentially change your mindset, because how you see it may not be how somebody else is interpreting that problem.
That is so true. And I think what I hear from that is I think this is part of our self-identity. This is our self-identity is how and is part of our perspective, which is how we see the world, and how we see the world is what's true for us. So we have no reason to question it. But what's true for us is also our experience. And it's only when we discover what is it that led us to believe that in our self-identity, because if I could speak a little bit to the brain, and I'm speaking in very simplified terms. So literally, the brain says, when I saw this before, the next thing I did was. So unless we're really moved into a different perspective, it's why habits are so automatic. We literally operate on automatic pilot.
Because we've already mapped out our pattern.
We've already mapped out our pattern. And it takes another approach to be able to change that pattern. That approach is very possible, and it's very effective. But unless we do that, it's a natural thought. It's like breathing. It's a natural thought to just think, okay, well, this means that. But it
So
doesn't
let
always
me
mean.
ask you this. With the changing of the perspective, how in your coaching do you help someone to see a different pattern, to actually learn a different pattern, to make a new perspective habit?
Mhm. Well, I work with different modalities, so sometimes it depends on the specific situation that I'm working with as to which one I would choose, depending on that situation. But I can say in one of the very common ways that we change perspective is by using questions. Because questions, so if you don't mind if I just share a little bit about sort of some brain chemistry here. When we're in a stressful situation and we're thinking like I've got things are out of sorts in my environment and I'm in that kind of protective space, I might be from a fear, or it might just be from an anxiety, whatever it's from. We're in that uncomfortable space. Whenever we're in that space, we are triggering cortisol, which if if I may just summarize this up in sort of simple terms, I call that red brain. Red brain because it because it literally constricts our blood vessels and it constricts our body. It's like it puts everything on guard. It's like our defense mechanism. It's like says, be on guard. We have to, protect you from something. And so we can't really create solutions in that mindset, which is why people say that when we have a problem, we can't solve it from the same level it was created, because that's cortisol. It's shut down our solution-oriented part of our brain, if I'm simplifying this, which is our endorphins and our creativity. So we actually have to shut that off. A question forces the subconscious mind to go to the creative part of the brain. And a question forces the subconscious mind to think of something. So we can ask a creative question, something like, what would I do in this situation if I didn't have this fear? So that makes us think of another possibility. And from there we can say, and how would that be possible? How can I create something here? Because cortisol is all about can't. but
Yeah.
we're asking, how can I create something here? Like, what's one possible thing that we can say about this situation? So it just shuts off the chemistry that shuts down our solutions. So then
Huh.
we can begin to be creative. We can begin to see something. Once we begin that, as long as we can continue that, we can continue to build new neural pathways. Now, I'm really simplifying this. We do a little bit more than this.
That's okay. Most of my listeners aren't scientists, so simplification, it
I'm
works.
well, I'm just really simplifying. So basically what we're helping a person understand is it's a very it's very experiential. So what about this? You know, it's not complicated. You don't have to know a whole bunch about this to be able to be effective with it. What about this? What is possible if you are not afraid? Another question I like to ask is, how could this be absolutely perfect for your ultimate goal? How could this challenge be absolutely perfect for your ultimate goal? So that again has us think of solutions, right? And it has us think of a different perspective in the bigger picture. So then we can see that the obstacle is a small part of the bigger picture. It's like a few steps that we have to overcome. So there are several things that we can work with if in the approach of questions. There's other approaches as well, because we can also do body postures that shift body chemistry, brain chemistry as well. So just in a nutshell, that's an aspect that we can use.
And that, okay, so I'm an operations person. I'm not like a salesperson or anything like that. I'm operations in my blood. I can make things turn and I can make them from A to B and to C and and I can tell you exactly how it happens. From what you just told me, that's literally like taking steps. Like, okay, so in operations to change something, we have to see the bigger picture, but we need to know what steps we have to take in order to get there, or the entire wheel will just go like everywhere and the spokes will fly off and it'll be chaos. So you have to take the steps no matter what in order to change that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how you approach it with the questions, because you set it up and you make the mind start to think. Well, why? Well, what can I do? And it's not the normal response, because your brain now all of a sudden is like, whoa, hold on, there's an extra. We can do something different. So I mean, that's really good. I like that that approach to it. I mean, I can honestly tell you I'm not a scientist, so I do not understand the whole
Oh,
brain thing.
yes.
But I'm sure that it works. I mean, it's mindset. No matter what, you have to change your mindset in order to change your mind.
Yes, this is so true. So when I spoke of self-identity, self-identity is in a framework in our mindset. It's what determines our self-identity determines how we see the world, which determines how we make decisions. It determines how we interpret things, because perspective is really about interpretation. And what I have interpreted was important about this particular situation. Whereas someone with a different perspective will see it differently and will experience it differently. So what I help people do then is to become really quite masterful at creating a different perspective that will help them to evolve and grow towards their goal. Because you mentioned an important point of it's one step. This is so true, because we reverse engineer for a reason. Because it's kind of like the metaphor, if you were on a staircase and you were on the first step and you just stretched your hips to get to step 6, that would be painful.
Mhm.
Like you would hurt yourself.
Yeah.
You
Might
really
not make it
can't.
either.
Well, yeah, that would be a painful situation. You really can only go one step at a time, but that's the way it progresses and evolves, because as you take one step, you can assess and evaluate and progress to the next one, assess, evaluate, and progress to the next one. So it leads to growth. That process leads to growth. And so consequently, if we look at like the whole picture, we'll say, oh, well, this is one step and I can see that there's 5 more. So this one step, if I could overcome this, I'm on to step 2, I'm on to step 3, etc. Right?
I like that. That I mean, that actually speaks to my operations heart. Um,
Yes.
like a lot of times in my business and for women in my business and women in male dominated industries, which is my coaching audience, we have what we call imposter syndrome. So
Mhm.
we see ourselves in positions that we don't feel that we can accomplish. And I think it's unfortunately it's a mindset from being in a business that normally overlooks us to begin with. And I'm not, tooting my female horn here or anything like that. So don't get me wrong in that respect. What it is that a lot of women unfortunately approach business, and not just my business, a lot of business, the wrong way. And they keep their blinders on and they don't step outside their box. And then because of the fact that they have that irrational fear, like you said earlier, and they have
Mhm.
that imposter syndrome saying, no, I can't do that. I have no idea how to do that. Instead of, as your approach suggests, taking it one step at a time, educating yourself in the process to say, okay, I accomplished that first step. This is the next step for me to learn how to do the end result.
Mhm. Yes, and your point has reminded me of one of the important aspects of this approach is when we recognize. So first of all, we look with gaining a greater awareness of really what is happening in my mindset, like what's working for me, and where are the things that things could work better for me, and what is it that I'm not even seeing that could work better for me. And in that process, we discover what I call self-protective strategies. And that's where we have created, for example, the person who will not do public speaking because if I do public speaking, people will know that maybe I'm not really an expert, or maybe they'll think that knowledge that I did have is not really as solid as they thought. In other words, I'm not going to be able to measure up in in public speaking. So my self-protective strategy is to find all kinds of other ways of presenting my message other than public speaking. And to me, that is a strategy. Like that is, it's real. Like that makes sense, it's not a limiting belief to me. It is actually a strategy. So I call those self-protective strategies. What we do when we work with this, like taking this one step at a time, is in order to grow, we set up what I would call an experiment where we say, okay, so what would it take for me to be successful in public speaking? Well, I would need to know my audience, I would need to prepare, etc., whatever my steps are that I determine. And then I set myself up for an experiment where I can try. I can say, okay, I am going to speak in this situation under these circumstances, and I'm just going to evaluate how did I do. I'm I would say I haven't seen anyone not do better than they expected because they don't have an image of success in the first place. So once they begin to prepare and step into it, they start feeling some success. I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, but they're always more successful than what they thought. And they say, okay, so now I see another area to grow. So basically what we do is learn how to understand those self-protective strategies as kind of like bridges. When you learn what it is that you're avoiding, it's the bridge to where you want to go.
Hmm. Okay. I like that. So you're using your self-protective strategy, as you put it, as a bridge to actually overcome it.
Yes, because
Okay.
basically, when we run into obstacles, eh, obstacles are really kind of like a roadmap. They're showing us exactly what we need to learn or gain knowledge in, or gain a new skill in, or face, or develop a new perspective in. They're showing us exactly what we need to do to get where we need to be.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like having the best roadmap ever. But it doesn't feel that way at first. So basically, this is also, no, it doesn't at all. This is the part of the mindset shift. We begin to recognize, this is exactly what I need to do, because on the other side of this is everything I want. We, so this is, again, in a nutshell, how people can change their perspectives and evolve beyond what they really thought was possible.
And the limiting belief in yourself is unfortunately very, very real when it comes to not only women but men as well. I mean, men, starting out early in their careers, they have, some men approach it where they're like, I'm gonna get this and I'm gonna, conquer the world and I'm gonna become the next president, and all this other stuff. And then you got the guys out there going, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. You know, I have no
Oh,
idea what I'm doing.
exactly. And in all of those, both of those approaches are very common in our own evolution and our own growth. And the thing to keep in mind is that we're the only person that gets our dreams.
Mhm.
So that means that it's intended that we are able to fulfill our dreams, because they only come to us. They don't come to anyone else, and we don't get anyone else's dreams either. That's because we have the operating system for those dreams. But they're not always perfectly clear when they first come. I mean, they kind of show up as they show up. So this is a process where we can say, I really want to achieve this, whether I know how to or not. There are ways that we can create a mindset that is more likely to achieve that in, I would say, a less cumbersome road. I would say definitely a path that was a lot easier than mine. I honestly felt like I honestly felt when I was doing those changes, I don't know. I've often said it felt like I was facing a mountain and I was wearing flip-flops.
Jeez.
That's how it felt.
So tell us a little bit more about that, about your experience in the corporate world and what really happened to change your trajectory. I mean, because you were on a specific path and you were doing a specific thing, thinking that you were going in the correct direction, and then they went and they put a mountain right in front of you.
Well, I had more than one mountain I was climbing at that time. I think it was such a direct shift that, and I completely had not even thought of it prior to that, that it really forced me to change how I was approaching what I was doing. And it made me recognize I loved my work, but I wanted to try it outside of the healthcare industry. And I wanted to, but I didn't really know how that was going to look at the time. So I literally had to experiment myself, which is why I had a pretty good network. I did some recruiting for a little bit, and I just did temporary work, worked in different industries to get a sense of what that was. In that experience, I recognized the process of change for myself, but I also recognized it was all around me as well. I could see people, like I said, not really wanting to move out of jobs that they really didn't like for certain reasons, or having trouble making changes, or when they got packages such as like myself, just really having trouble managing it. And I thought, and my experience of working through that was so cumbersome. I mean, it was it was not a pretty picture. It was definitely trial and error. Um, and I thought there's a better way for this. It would be so helpful when we run into things in life, which we're always going to just know, how can I approach this so that I don't have to feel like I've flogged the swamp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it became really inspiring to me. Like, it's probably the most inspiring time of my life. It's like, I thought, this will never, ever, ever happen to me again, because I'll have a different perspective. But also, I really want to make a difference for other people who experience sudden changes coming to them, or they just simply want to create a change. And it's so, it's so difficult.
I just did a podcast the other day about passion and
Hmm.
turning your passion into business, into your career,
Yes.
or finding your passion within the business world, where you thought you had your passion when you were in corporate, but because of that mountain that they threw up in front of you, you actually had to change your pattern. You had to change your direction and realize that your passion no longer lied there.
That's very true. And I don't know that I would have changed it if that series of events hadn't occurred, but I believe everything. I truly believe that as difficult as it can be, everything does unfold in a better way, because I was changing my personal life, my professional life. My whole world was, the pieces of the puzzle were completely apart. Was reassembling all aspects. I don't think there was one professional that wasn't involved in my life at that time. But it was all together at once, and I thought, there's only one way. I mean, you have to go through it. You cannot go around it. You have to go through it. And I thought, I'm going to go through it, because I was newly a single mom then, and it was essential to me in my mind that my daughter was watching what was going on. That was not just an experience for me, it was an experience for her too.
Mhm.
And I thought, so I need to be on top of this. So it's kind of like it was highly inspiring, I'll tell you.
I can imagine. I can imagine. I mean, we go through these trials and tribulations in our lives and in our careers, and we don't expect the left turn, so to speak. We don't see it coming because we put those patterns in our
Yes,
brain, and we've already figured out that, okay, this is what the outcome's going to be because this is what it always has been. And then all of a sudden you're like, and you're like, holy cow, what the
right.
heck's going on? So you have to make a different decision. You have to approach it differently. You have to see it differently, and you
Yes.
don't have a choice. So going through those trials and tribulations and being, thrown into the deep end of the pool, so to speak. And like what my brother did whenever I was 4, he took me to the middle of the pool, which was 6 feet, and he said, sink or swim. You know,
Oh,
I wasn't expecting it. I swam my ass back to the side. I can guarantee you that. But at that point in time, I can guarantee you I went under a couple times.
oh
And
yes.
but
Yes.
that's what we have to do.
And that was what I started to recognize, especially as I started working with coaching, was that all of those things had a better outcome on the other side of them. Like it's just kind of like I just did a lot of projects all at once. And they all had better outcomes on the other side of them. I just had to keep my momentum with them.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it was a huge learning that I didn't have prior to that. And that's why I think it was so surprising too, because I was not accustomed to such a, I don't know, such a big challenge all at once.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, well, when you get that curveball thrown at you in life, it will definitely throw you for a loop. But that's the situations where your fight or flight kick in. What are you going to do? Are you going to, like what's that with fear as an acronym? Are you going to, face everything and rise? Or are you going to everything and run, I
I
mean,
know.
what are you gonna do? I mean, I've always had bad knees, so I don't flight. I've always fought. So no matter what, I fight. And it's one of those things. But in that respect, I'm still going to look at the scenario the only way I can see it until someone else steps in to help me see a different perspective.
Yes, that's very accurate, because I had no idea that my previous frameworks that had worked really well. In other words, my mindset that had previously been very helpful to me was not helpful at all in working through this process. I really needed, I needed a lot of different tools. And I think that that's the kind of thing that I wish for, and that's the kind of difference I would like to make, is that that was really there's a way of embracing that, and there's a way of seeing the outcomes and the, as they call it, the silver lining on the other side. And there's definitely a way of embracing that, and but it's not always obvious to us initially. So if there's a way that this process can work and help people get what they want and then get, you know, the fullness of their life, and it does make it quicker and easier. It's not just, you know, I'm not just saying that, it does make it quicker and easier. Then that's what I would love to do, because I think there's no point in us, you know, flogging the swamp if we could be reaching our aspirations in an easier way. Furthermore, stress is really not healthy for our body.
Yeah, that is most definitely true. And that gives you a belly.
Well, it does a lot of things to us. So it's overall just helping people get really what they want. It's like I've often said, what they want when they want.
Yeah. I mean, I see that. I mean, for coaching, I mean, people like you and I, coaches like you and I, we are there to help someone not go through what we had to go through, to not face what we had to face. But I think sometimes, like, some people come to coaches and they have this mindset of, oh, they're going to fix everything for me. No, 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 no. You still have to put in the work. You still have to do this and you have to do that and you still have to go through this. It's just coaching such as yours and mine will help it go smoother instead of you fumbling and dropping and falling over and all that other good stuff that we did in our succession to get to where we are. So, and it helps people, it helps my audience to understand you still have to put in the work, but we're there to help.
Yes, I call it, it takes out a lot of the trial and error,
Yes,
reduces
that
the
it does.
trial and error significantly.
Yes, that
And
it
it's
does.
very much the why, you know, that's why athletes, you know, are known for their coaches. They're always looking for coaches. You know, I always have a coach myself as well, of more than one. And I find them just truly helpful.
Well, you need coaches sometimes to get you out of that mindset. You need someone to help you get to that next step. I mentor people and I also do coaching. And I still work in the corporate world and just answer questions. You know, it all depends upon the approach at that point. But no matter what, someone is there that's already been there and done that and, you know, got the t-shirt, that type of thing. And we're there to help you no matter what.
Right. There are some things in life that are just way more effective. They're not a do it yourself. They're not a do it alone thing. There's some areas in life where it's just really helpful to have an expert, someone who's informed, a guide, a mentor,
Mhm. The one
another
thing
pair
I've
of
always
eyes.
hated. Oh,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
Another pair of eyes and ears and a brain, right?
Yes, yes, yes. The one thing I've always hated is like in and there is this is a 100% fallacy was is when somebody says, "Oh, I'm a self-made person." No, you're not. You are not self-made. You had the drive to make yourself, but there were people along the way that helped you. Don't discount that in the long run. I mean, I know that I would have never gotten to where I am in my business without the help of others. I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't learn all of this by myself. It's not like I picked up the
No,
encyclopedia of transportation and said, okay, I'm going to start in A and I'm going to end in Z. It doesn't work that way.
no.
You learn through other people's life experience, and then you learn through doing yourself. And in having that expertise along the way is what shaped me to be who I am. It's what helped me to become who I am. I had experts along the way to help me. I had people. I had a manager at one point in time in my career, and it was the most simplistic advice she'd ever given me. And but it was the best advice. She told me straight up, looked me straight in my face and said, "Your boobs are not going to sell this business." Okay, because I was very I was young. I was in my 20s. I still
Right.
wore the low cut tops, and it was very chesty and everything like that. And I'm like, I looked down at myself. I was like, okay. And so I went out and I bought a couple new shirts. And then I noticed that, believe it or not, within a couple weeks, I actually noticed some other people that I normally wouldn't talk to all of a sudden engaging in conversation. What it was is they were actually uncomfortable to talk to me with my boobs hanging out, so to speak. But it was just the most simplistic advice. Had it
Hmm.
not been for that advice, I, I mean, what way would have I turned? And I wouldn't have
Yeah.
potentially made relationships that I still actually have to this day with those people had I continued on that path. And it was just something as simple as, your boobs aren't going to sell this business. You don't need to, you know, little higher shirt, type thing. But I mean, but if you're looking at it in the aspect of somebody's there to help you, to coach you, to mentor you, you need to take that advice. Nobody is self-made. We all got there with a little help from somebody.
Yes. One of my favorite phrases, which is a reminder of that, is many minds make light work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. It was like I referenced the Lean Project. There's a reason why they put different people from different areas together to work on a project that they're not normally used to. And
Right.
that's because you're bringing in outside perspectives. You can continue going along in business and just riding that rail and stay in that course. But no matter what, something's going to come and something's going to get in your way. So you need that outside perspective to be able to create that new pattern, as you put it. But you also need to understand that strategy that you're in can change.
Yeah. Oh, yes, totally. Well, strategies are always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think unless we evolve, it's really difficult for us to be even at pace or even be ahead because we want to be ahead because we actually want to lead.
Yes.
We want to be able to embrace what's ahead, not kind of be reacting to
Yeah.
what's ahead type of thing.
Being
And so,
proactive is definitely better than being reactive.
yes, it totally is. And that just helps us kind of keep on top of things, which is the approach we're looking for. However, it's just inevitable that we're going to run into things that are unexpected, bigger than us, or we need to find a new way.
Mhm. Well, Luann, can you tell us where my audience can find you?
I think the best place to find me is on LinkedIn at the moment. Um, and so it's just, there's only one Luann Horobin. It's pretty easy to find me, and I'm on there pretty regularly. So I'd love to hear from anybody that wants to chat further. And I do offer a free 1 hour consultation. I call it a strategy call, and for mindset alignment. And we just talk about, like, what is it that someone would like? What's going on? What can we do with mindset with that? So
Very cool. Very cool. Well,
yeah.
thank you for coming on my show, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and sharing your trials and your tribulations and your experience with all of us. We do definitely appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciated being your guest. I love the work that you do, and so it was great to be able to collaborate with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you for listening today. And remember, see your strength, recognize your significance, and embrace your opportunity. Have a great day.